Lights?
Oh. No,
That's in case the hockey game comes on, then you can.
it's still on.
The Village of Wheeling Plan Commission meeting for Thursday, June 13th is called to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Doorband.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson, I am here. Commissioner Powers.
Here.
Commissioner Schaaf.
Here.
Commissioner Styland.
Here.
Commissioner Zankara gave prior notice that he would not be in attendance, and Chairman Raffato.
Here. Mr. Jennings, are there any changes to the agenda?
We do have a couple of changes. The consent agenda item, docket SCBA 1314, was removed from consent. The petitioner's here. There were some questions regarding the docket, and a revised plan was submitted. That will be moved down under items for review. Be the first item under items for review. And then the item docket number 2013-10, the variation at 567 Northgate Parkway. There is a minor change to the motions. There's a second motion added to that. There's an appearance docket. The variation relates to an appearance change. There was no appearance change motion in the staff report. So we're adding a, just as a technicality, the appearance of the building would be modified if the variation is approved.
Okay, thank you.
And what?
That would be docket number PC 13-5 when that motion is brought forth.
Okay, so starting with the first item for review SCBA 13-14, Sir Hadash 200 West Dundee Road, appearance approval of wall and freestanding sign. Mr. Jennings?
You can come forward. We received a question early in the week relating to the plant material that's proposed on the plan. Staff spoke with the petitioner regarding the material, suggested some changes based on the comments that were made, and we have a revised plan which is now in the materials. A revised plan for the landscaping, removing the plant that was in question, and there's also an additional note for one of the plants that has a warning relating to its current status from the greenhouses this year. So with that, I would ask Mr. Farnport.
If you could just, one more thing, Commissioner Johnson will be abstaining from discussion on this particular docket.
Correct.
But you will take roll.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Go ahead, sir. If you can identify yourself, name and business address, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Miran Faramanpur. I'm the architect for Shah Hadash Reconstruction and Synagogue at 200 West Dundee. My address is 3996 Orchard Lane in Long Grove, Illinois.
Do you have anything else to add to what Mr. Jennings said?
I can just add that the discussion was revolving around the annuals and perennials that we had suggested around the sign. One of the species that we had suggested turns out to be invasive, even though neither the landscaper nor myself caught that. Staff had pointed that out to us, so we said we'll replace those and put geraniums instead. And the other one was a mistake that I had made on the table. I had put a different Latin name for one of the plants. The impatiens are, we are told, they're susceptible to blight this year, so I added a note that should they die, we replace them within 2 weeks. We like this to look nice as well, so.
Great, thank you. So I'll start with Commissioner comments. Commissioner Dorban.
Thank you. When I looked at the revised landscaping, I noticed that you had a lot of spirea. And spirea, by and large, get very woody. And I'm wondering if maybe you could change some of those out for something that's an evergreen, because they really end up looking like sticks all winter, and unless you keep them trimmed back in the fall.
Let me just point out that the landscaping, we kind of jumped the gun, and we already installed all the landscaping when we were doing the rest of the landscaping in the front. So it's already in place. What we have suggested is we will take out the ranunculus and so forth that we need to do. The spireas, frankly, I like them because they have a very nice spring color to them. They have flowers and all that. Yes, they do have to be cut back. They do have to be thinned out on a regular basis. I'm told every other year would be enough.
Okay, as long as you're aware of that and you're
Absolutely,
willing to,
yes.
take care of that, because
Well-
I've ended up taking all of mine out
I know,
for
I
that
just
very
looked down
reason.
here, and I saw a lot of the spireas up front by Village Hall have also died. And
They're nice when they look nice, and they're
Yeah.
not nice when they don't, so I appreciate that. That's my only question, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Powers.
Thanks. If the landscape plan gets approved, does it go before the village board at all?
No, a sign, the planning commission has final approval on the sign.
Okay. Is the area where the landscaping is that irrigated at all? I was just curious.
It is not.
Okay. And the only comment to kind of piggyback what Commissioner Dorman said, the cotton Easters seem to get pretty big too. Do you have, I assume you have a landscaping service that cuts your grass. Will they also be maintaining the sign area?
Yes, whoever cuts the grass for us will be maintaining all of the landscaping, particularly in the front.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Commissioner Schaaf.
Thank you. You are aware of the downy mildew on the impatiens?
That's the blight that
Right, that's the
we're
blight.
alerted to, yes.
But this year, it seems that impatiens also have a fungus that contaminates the soil. The nurseries haven't been selling very many impatiens. I know when the garden club had their plant sale, we were very careful on the impatiens. I'm not telling you to replace them, but if they die, I understand that your note that they'll be replaced, but you need to, if they do die,
Not with the same thing, yes.
You need to check the soil.
Yeah. We just went through and actually had all of the areas in the front that we were planting new materials, tilled and fertilized and all that. So our landscaper is pretty good. We have a couple of people on the landscaping committee for the synagogue that are very much into this, and they'll be keeping an eye on
Good.
all
I
of
hope that they keep that maintained. Like Commissioner Dorban said, the spirea tends to grow, and it does not look good when it gets out of hand.
Yeah, it gets
You keep them trimmed back, and they're fine. That's my only comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Stylin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I really don't know much about plants other than I see circles on the diagram, but I do kind of agree with Commissioner Dorban that it would be nice to have an evergreen type shrub that stays green all year throughout the winter time. And I was wondering, you know, if it would be possible up in the northwest corner, you've got
southwest corner.
southwest. You've got 2 spireas and then the 3,
Those are all 5 spireas.
oh, they are all the same?
Yeah, and it actually matches the same on the other side of the driveway.
You know, if you installed them just recently, maybe you could move one of the spirea down here to, kind of balance the front where the front of the tree, I guess I'll just call it that. And then maybe put an evergreen in the middle, so put an evergreen on the top and the bottom and move one of the,
I mean, there's really 1,000 different ways you can landscape the area. I can tell you that we had a lot of people who were adamantly against having evergreens. They actually went through pulling out the evergreens that were already overgrown and kind of woody and kind of hanging out there around the sign so that we can have something that has a little more interest to it. than
but
just-
you're going to keep the spireas under control and
Well,
keep
there's a lot
them
of work
trimmed
involved.
every
Absolutely,
year.
yes.
So, I mean, keeping the evergreens
You have to do-
trimmed,
you have to
two
do the same.
evergreens,
Yeah.
wouldn't be that much harder.
It won't be, no.
I'd really, I know nothing about plants. I'd go for a couple small arborvitaes, just, on this north, whatever way it is. Oh, I see, there's an arrow down there. So it is the, the south side of the tree, That would be my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, the addition of two arborvitae and the movement of one of the,
Would it be possible for you to do that, to add?
We can certainly do it. I'd rather not take one out and just have a single bush in the middle of
Right.
something that's symmetrical to
Could
the other
you-
side. So we can add two
Yes,
more
could you
somewhere.
add them?
Sure. I can add two more in front of the tree, closer to Dundee Road.
Right.
To just kind of give it a little more of an evergreen look.
Is everybody
The
okay
base
with
of the
that?
tree.
Adding,
Adding.
without
Without
I'd be fine
subtracting
with
anything?
adding.
Commissioner Stylen?
yeah, that'd be fine.
Commissioner Powers?
That's fine.
Commissioner Schaaf?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Stylen?
No, that's it, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you.
I have nothing except to say that your sign is very nice.
Thank you.
The monument sign, very nice. I like the colors, and it's
It's eye-catching.
yeah, it is eye-catching, very much so, very much so.
I was going to ask, are we still carrying on with having our sign recommendations for those parents?
Yeah,
I would like to enter that one as well.
Okay.
I think it's really a nice sign.
Is there any significance to the colors?
No, it's sort of the rainbow colors,
Yeah,
very
okay.
all-inclusive and
Okay, very, very, very nice though.
the story of Noah and all
Uh-huh.
that stuff.
Okay, well, cool, that's good. Okay, great, thank you. So, Mr. Jennings, do we have any, we have some additions?
There was the condition from the staff report that the existing wall sign shall be removed and the repairs to the wall should be inspected prior to permit issuance. It's a pin-mounted sign being replaced with the pin-mounted signs. We want to make sure that we could avoid
Come
that.
see it, yeah. The sign company who is taking them down is responsible for making sure everything's tucked on it properly.
And we would hold the permit until that point where we can double-check the facade.
So we can go ahead and remove the signs.
We just need-
Then have you come issue the permit for putting up the sign. Okay.
And then the
understood.
second condition, petitioner add at least 2 evergreen shrubs in the sign area.
Great, thank you. Do I hear a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
We have a motion by Commissioner Stylen, seconded by Commissioner Dorban. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Stylen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dorban,
Yes?
Commissioner Johnson abstains, Commissioner Powers.
Yes.
Commissioner Schaaf,
Yes.
and Chairman Ruffado.
Yes,
5 yeses, 1 abstention, and 1 absent.
thank you.
Thank you.
We'll just have something for you to sign, sir. PC 13.5 is appearance? Appearance? Okay. Pardon? Yeah, no, I know that, but I just, normally when I say the docket, yeah, sign it. Give yours to Brooke, I'll give this to Andrew. That's extra. What? Oh, I ran against the, calling docket number 2013-10 and PC 13.5. Wyland Metals, 567 Northgate Parkway, zoning variation for height of building and appearance approval. Mr. Secretary.
Docket number 2013-10, Thomas McCabe, engineer for Wyland Metals Incorporated, property owner, is seeking a variation from Title 19 zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code, Chapter 19.07, Industrial Districts, Section 1907-030, Limited Industrial District, and Section 1907-040, General Industrial District, relating to maximum building height in order to construct a building addition to the existing industrial facility that exceeds the allowable building height at 567 Northgate Parkway. A zoning variation is intended to be a method of adjustment to equalize regulations where Title 19 of the Village of Wheeling zoning has created an unnecessary hardship. The variation is designed to allow affected property owners the same rights and privileges that others enjoy in the same zoning district. In order to be granted a variation, a petitioner is required to demonstrate through testimony to the Plan Commission at the public hearing why their request meets the conditions of the village code, including, but not limited to, how their individual situation is unique or unusual. Prior to the public hearing, the petitioner provides written statements meant to show that their request for variation meets the standards established in Title 19. The commission chairperson will typically direct that these statements be entered into the record without a full reading of them at the hearing. Based upon the testimony and supporting material submitted, the Plan Commission will make findings in support of or against the petitioner's testimony and report those findings to the village board.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Mr. Jennings?
No additional staff comments at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. Will you two be the only two gentlemen speaking tonight?
Perhaps. This
Well,
is
then, if
the
you
owners,
could-
the owners might as well.
Okay. If you could please stand if you're going to speak. Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you give tonight to be the truth?
I do.
Great, thank you. And if you could give your names and business addresses to our recording secretary. If you have a business card, that'd be great. Speak it out so she can take it. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Tom McCabe with Spaceco Incorporated. We're the civil engineers.
Super.
And we're at 9575 West Higgins Road in Rosemont.
Okay. And if the two gentlemen behind you can identify themselves, please. Thank you.
My name is Markus Schuler. I'm the Executive Vice President of Wyland Metals. I do live in downtown Chicago.
Chuck Reister from Grenner Reister Architects, 20 North Wacker Drive in Chicago.
Thank you. Take it away, sir.
Okay. Before you tonight, what we're asking for is to come out the top of our building. It's about 40 feet high right now. And as you can see from our board, existing, we have, when the building were built, we have two towers underground. They're about 30 to 40 feet underground. So the height stayed at 40 feet.
Oh, cool.
And that is a process that runs the copper tubing up and down through for processing. And we now need two additional towers, but unfortunately, our building's built. So what we're proposing to do is get it at ground level and then go up the extra, it's about 33 feet in one of our column areas. And so from a construction standpoint, we went from column line to column line in north-south, column line to column line in east-west direction. We're going to we'll put columns next to the ones that are in there and then build the new, take out the old roof, and then bring in the equipment. And so as far as, I guess, from a uniqueness standpoint, if we knew we were going to need these 20 years ago, we would have done it. And so now what we have, they're in the back of the property, and you're familiar with it. Behind us is a retention pond and then woods. In the front of us, when we walked it, there's already an equipment kind of corridor on the roof that's about 10 feet high. If you walk back right along here, and we walk out the street, right there, correct?
West side.
Yeah. And so as we walked out Northgate Parkway and then walked across the street, it was about 200 feet out before we can even see that. And so this is going to be well behind there. Again, it's 33 feet high. And no one behind us, we own all the property to Lake Cook Road, so there's nobody on that side. The property to the south, their building is up a lot further towards the road, so we don't believe this is going to impact them at all. And again, from the west side, I don't know if they're even going to see it, to be honest with you. So, and again, coming out of the top instead of going into the ground, to go into the ground, we'd have to dig about 30 to 40 feet of material out of there, cut the floor, and this is a clean operation. So dirt and all that, plus trying to shore up, put foundations in. We're going to have to do that at the level we're at, but not 40 feet down with groundwater and things like that, and then try and get trucks in there to haul that much dirt out of there. Was this going to be cost prohibitive? So that's...
And disrupt the process as it goes along, so. You intend to...
If you could grab a microphone, you could grab that microphone right there. Thank you.
We intend to, the first floor would match the masonry, and then anything above would be the metal siding, so all the materials would match existing.
Great, thank you. Any other comments?
That's about it. We'll entertain questions.
They'll come. Thank you. So we'll start with Commissioner Powers.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The building is in an I-2 or an I, is it in both the I-2 and an I-3 district? Is like the parking lot in the I-2 and the building in the I-3, or does the building span multiple districts? I was just curious. Because I know the document for the motions specifies I-2 and I-3. Is that the reason for that?
I think the line is an east-west line. So I think part of the parking lot is going to be in a separate district. I'm going to look at it right now and see what it looks like.
Okay. So I was kind of interested in the one you showed with it the underground. Is that what you currently have in there?
That's correct.
Okay, so currently you have the 40 feet for the building, plus you go down like another 30 feet underground?
Yes.
That's correct.
So is that gonna just stay there, and then you're gonna build the addition to go up the 40 plus the 33?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the equipment that's in there now is going to continue operating. We need that, but we need more of those.
So is that like one big production line, and then you're going to put the tower in, you're going to like connect the production line to these towers somehow, or it's just totally independent of that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, good question. No, it's really doubling up on the same equipment. This equipment, it's an annealing line, is our bottleneck. It's preventing us from expanding the business. It is the crucial step in the future here for our company to continue to grow. The alternative would just be to renovate the old one as good as we can, modernize it a little bit, get 10 or 15% out of it, but it would sort of nail us down for the next decades with this type of equipment to the size we currently have. The second line would allow us to basically pursue a good 50 to 60% growth over the next several years.
Okay. have you worked or had talks with the FAA or the airport regarding the additional height that you want to go up for any concerns that they may have about that?
We have, and we've got actually we have 4 permits in to the FAA because each corner of the tower needs its own permit. So I didn't know that either. So we're waiting on that right now. We've had several conversations with them. I think it's just a time thing right now.
So would we have to put some kind of stipulation that this approval would have to be based on that getting approved to those permits?
It's a code requirement, but it's a code requirement that I think is good to put down on the motion. So we would have it as a condition of approval, just as a reminder to us to check for that determination of no hazard before a permit's issued.
Okay.
Okay, and then on the, in your comments, in one part of the pack we have, it was standards for variation 6. It states does not increase the number of workers on the property. And then the letter, we received a letter, it said that states 25 to 30 jobs over the next 10 to 15 years. So there seems to be a discrepancy between no increase and then the 25 to 30 jobs. Where does that, how come that discrepancy is there? Is there an explanation for that?
No, I think when we looked at it, I guess maybe we thought, is this, this is immediate impact that all of a sudden we're going to hire 100 more people? And so it's not. It's a relatively small number of people each year. So it shouldn't have said no people, but I guess we didn't want to say we're going to build this and we're going to, this will open up 50 or 100 jobs. It's really, it's a few jobs a year type thing. And maybe, this is going to be to build, even to assemble the equipment's going to be 2 or 3 years. So just to get the stuff working is going to be, a couple of years out.
I guess I have a question too about on the east elevation. You had the 40-foot building, but then you mentioned something about an equipment box or something on the top, like for an additional 10 feet?
In the middle of the building, there is a skylighted area that comes up 10 feet.
10 feet from the, so the top of that is at 50 feet, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's existing.
That's existing, okay, and then you're going, so your proposal is to go up another 23 feet from that, correct? Okay. The actual cutout that was on the overhead that was provided to us shows that it's 35 by 76. I assume it's like 35 wide and 76 deep, or vice versa?
One bay.
Pardon me?
It's one bay.
So
North and south is 35 feet, east-west is 76, or
okay,
approximately.
so are they it's just gonna be one to hold those 2 pieces of equipment in there, correct?
Yes.
Is that gonna be like pretty snug, or is there gonna be any kind of wiggle room in there? I mean, machinery is gonna take up, how much, if anything, is gonna be left? I was just kind of curious on like the top and then the sides of that particular addition that you're putting on. When the machinery goes in, will there be any room on the sides and on the top? Okay.
There's going to be a catwalk across the top, and there'll be ladders up the sides.
Okay. And there would be, I assume, I guess this is for Andrew, there would be no reason for a new site plan because it utilizes the existing footprint of the building, correct?
That's right. The appearance docket is the PC docket is something we use for site plan and appearance. In this case, there's no particular site plan change. It's really more of an appearance change.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to ask about is, I wasn't on the commission at the time, but there was a land bank parking agreement on in late 2011. I guess that moved the parking around from one area to another, correct?
It moved the unbuilt parking around. That's correct.
Right. So in case they do hire the additional employees, that's the spots. If it was deemed necessary that additional parking would be needed, they would start chewing that space up.
If you look at the screen now, this area had been a land bank parking area. Due to the consideration in the company of where the addition, not this particular addition, but a different addition might be needed, they requested that this land bank parking be moved It's been scattered somewhat into other locations to free up this space. I think it was 40,000 square foot.
Correct.
A 40,000 square foot addition would be possible here. So they've done the approval side to facilitate that addition once their programming is ready for it.
And just a general question, how long has your business been there? How long have you occupied that building?
Since 1986, we have started in 1980 across the street with the slitting center, sort of the downstream operation, and added in 86 the mill building at this present location.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Schaaf?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for staff. Does it look like even if they add the 35 to 40, as they state in the letter, somewhere down the line, should not impact the parking?
The parking is actually a pretty detailed approval. It's recorded against the property as a covenant. There are triggers in that agreement that would require them to build the land bank parking based on constructing the addition in this area. There's a trigger.
Right.
There's a trigger mechanism in that document that's recorded as a covenant. So.
Okay, but this project should not trigger additional parking requirement?
No, not based on what we've heard. We do have the ability to require it should we feel it's necessary, but
Okay.
we don't feel it's necessary.
Yeah, that little discrepancy is although it seems minor, but it's still part of the special use. And as long as staff is aware, and you are aware that it could trigger additional parking.
Sure.
Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Stalin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you saw in the last docket, I have a little bit of trouble with directions and stuff. The addition is going to be on the east side of the building, and the retention basin is further east, correct? The picture of the facade that we have in our packet only shows, yeah, it's that one, only shows the east elevation of the addition. And my presumption is, are you going to be taking out that entire wall to install your new equipment, or are you just going to add on the top?
We're going to add on the top, and the equipment, it has to get built inside, so there's overhead doors. So they'll be, once everything is in, they'll be backing in and then building these towers and the equipment actually inside the building.
Okay, so you're going to leave the existing material as is and then just construct matching
Correct.
material as you go further up?
That's correct.
And like I say, we only have the east elevation. What are the other three sides going to be? Are they going to be exactly the same as?
The same metal.
It'd be the exact same siding that's up there.
We have the south elevation, so anything that there's brick on the first floor, metal siding up to 40 feet. And so we would have metal siding on all sides of the addition.
Is there any way that you could add, like I don't want to say something decorative, but something at the top of the building that maybe, a stripe or something that just kind of gives it a little bit more character? I think your building has, it's a real nice building, and if you're going to build something up, it just might be nice to have
The cap to the addition.
something, just something to differentiate it a little bit, an aluminum band or
Yeah,
something.
we can look at that.
Other than that, I think it's going to fit there. You're surrounded by industry. I don't think you're going to interfere with anybody except the airplanes. So I wish you the best of luck, and I'm glad you're continuing to stay in Wheeling, and someday maybe the sunflowers will start growing again, maybe?
It's not a lack of willingness on our part. We love to have it too, but they grow every year 10 inches shorter if you don't change the crop. So we do have to change it up once in a while to get them back to full size again.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorban?
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered, but I do have one question, because I was listening to a couple of the commissioners talking about what is the maximum height that these towers are going to be?
It's 33 feet above the 40 feet, so it'd be 73 feet.
So the top is 73 feet?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought I understood. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
All of my questions have already been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mine have two, though I'm a bit confused, Commissioner Steilen, about asking for a trim.
Well, if you look at this picture that Andrew has, the top of their building is capped already with something that...
A typical metal cap at the top of the building.
So you're looking for something on that addition,
On the roof of that addition.
roof of the addition to cap that?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're...
Similar to
so-
what's there, is that?
yeah, that'd be fine, you know,
Okay.
I just didn't see it on your plan, so I don't know if it was...
So can you add that as a condition? Is everybody okay with adding that as a condition?
Yes?
I had the
It might
impression
have
that
been part
Commissioner
of their
Stylen was
plans,
talking
so-
about like a different color or something.
Well, even if it's the color of the sign.
Yeah, I agree.
The red, you know,
It's like orange or something.
or orange or
Kinda neat,
red,
too.
whatever, I mean,
See it.
It's
Not
the
gonna see
color
it
of
much from
copper
Northgate.
that we work with.
That's right, it's copper colored.
Copper color.
copper.
That's
Makes sense, copper.
Okay, great.
And I think by the time the FAA gets done with us, we may have to put some,
Yeah, you may have.
you got lights or some kind of
Blinking
tape or
lights.
That'd be a
something.
very decorative top.
I'm sure. So what does this equipment do? I mean, what is it used for?
The equipment is an annealing line. When you roll strip, when you reduce the gauge of material, you harden the material. In order to process it further, to reduce the gauge even further, you need to sort of put it back in an oven, in an annealing line, to sort of recreate a soft condition. And that's really what it does. Some of our customers also require soft material to be supplied. Soft means metal that's sort of hard enough to sustain whatever they do with it, but be still formable before it breaks. So it does allow further processing for us to thinner gauges, and it's often a requirement by our customers too to have soft metal.
Interesting. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I just am thrilled that you're growing and wanting to stay here, so thank you.
No, certainly have all the plans to do so. Wieland is a very old company, founded in 1820.
Wow.
We won't catch up with that over there in Germany, but we will do our best to make it very long here too. It's still a privately held company, very committed to the products in the industry.
And you pronounce it Wieland?
It's actually Wieland, yeah. The
Wieland.
Germans, IE, are exactly the opposite pronunciation
For
of
us.
what one would do here.
So it's
But
Wieland.
we have come to learn to forgive, no problem there.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll take the docket separately. Let's do the variation first, which we have the conditions on.
I've moved all the conditions to the
Appearance? Okay, great. So there is nothing on docket number 2013-10. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Johnson, second by Commissioner Powers. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Johnson, I vote yes. Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Dorband?
Yes,
Commissioner Schaaf?
Yes.
Commissioner Stylen?
Yes.
And Chairman Rafato?
Yes. And then PC 13-5, appearance approval, and we have conditions.
Yes. Number one, the appearance approval is subject to the approval of docket number 2013-10. Number two, that a determination of no hazard by the FAA shall be submitted prior to permit issuance. And number 3, that the addition include a horizontal trim piece similar to the existing building.
Fair motion.
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes.
add one more condition?
Let's hear it.
The petitioner showed a side view of the addition that, and I'd just like to have that included in the packet that goes to the village board. You showed your, let's see,
South.
it must have been either the south side or the north side. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that'd give them a little bit better, well-rounded view of the addition.
Okay. Is everybody in agreement with that one?
Yes.
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 Okay, great, thank you. Did you read them?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Powers, seconded by Commissioner Stylin. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Stylin?
Yes.
Commissioner Dorband?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, I vote yes. Commissioner Schaaf?
Yes.
And Chairman Raffato?
Yes. Thank you. You'll have something to sign, two
Thank you.
documents to sign?
Motion to close on
Yeah, I
the,
will.
on the variation.
So moved.
We have a motion to close on the variation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We didn't put the sunflowers in, did we?
Yeah, no. It would be nice if they came back.
Bees are in trouble this year, so.
We,
I've been wrong. I thought it was, these times.
really?
Plus we have Wyland Road.
What? Yeah, we have Wyland Road, yeah, which doesn't make it easy.
That's a lot of words.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we take 5?
Sure, 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Give Andrew a chance to set up.
Meeting is called back into session. Calling docket number 2013-11, Village of Wheeling, amendments to Title 19 zoning. Mr. Secretary.
Docket number 2013-11. The Village of Wheeling is seeking amendments to Title 19 zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code, including the following. 1, modification of the parking requirements for multifamily residential buildings. 2, modification of the allowable reductions in required parking for shopping centers. 3, establishing a specific parking requirement for large retail stores. 4, establishing an administrative review for outdoor dining areas. 5, clarifying that residential plan unit developments may be permitted in non-residential districts. 6, modifying the standards for parking lot screening. And 7, clarifying language relating to the definitions and use classifications for recreational and health club uses. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings, please raise your hand. Swear the testimony you give tonight to be the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Continue on.
I'm Andrew Jennings, Village of Wheeling, 2 Community Boulevard, Wheeling. The list of amendments we compile over the course of a year. We do this probably every 6 to 12 months. We've had probably the most discussion on the zoning code amendment relating to parking. I will handle them in order of the report, I think is probably the best way to do this. And just take each one, because this is the first public hearing. I'd like to get a little bit on the record as to what these are. And then we can take questions on each one. Is that?
That's fine.
Make this large enough to actually read. Or not.
Over to, there you go.
There we go. Okay. The first item on the list is the parking requirement for multifamily buildings. The draft code in front of you includes the items that we've discussed at the last workshop meeting on this, which is a reduction in the overall parking requirement, somewhat similar to the parking requirement that existed in the code until 2005, where the total parking required for apartment-style buildings, which would be apartments and condos, is based on the number of bedrooms. As I had mentioned in the workshop, staff does recommend letting the decision as to requiring covered parking be a market-based decision. However, the commission disagreed with that, so we've as an alternative, we would also suggest the language that we inserted in the draft amendment allowing a waiver procedure. If the commission concurs with establishing a waiver, the draft as written would be just fine. If the commission is not in favor of having any sort of waiver and just doing it on a variation basis, we would just strike that one section from this draft. So with that, this is one of the ones where I do have a question as to consensus, just so we can be clear as to what this draft says. And before I ask for that, we did also receive a question from a commissioner seeking clarification on some of the existing language for this requirement. And one thing that was found to be confusing was where the 10% unassigned parking comes out of. What number are you taking 10% of? That is not changing, though it certainly is possible to be clearer in the code. So we did try out revising that section. While we're in the middle of revising that part of the code anyway, we could just as easily go ahead and clarify. And this is our attempt at doing that. As you can see here, trying to clarify that 10% is coming from the total parking requirement. The total parking requirement under townhome, in this case, being 2.75 spaces per unit. 10% comes from that total number. This is our attempt at cleaning that up. So with that, I'd like to open it to discussion on this section of the code, multifamily parking.
Commissioner Stalin?
And what, does this 2.75 spaces per unit include covered spaces or not?
So the staff recommendation is as it was before. We recommend taking it out. What's in the draft, though, follows the direction of the commission from the workshop, which was leave it in. So what I have suggested, if the consensus remains, leave it in. The piece that I added as an alternative, Yeah,
I'd rather not go into that part just yet. I'm more concerned with the number that you have quoted in that addition that you were putting in, the 2.7. Is that inclusive of, when you say the total parking, would that be covered and non-covered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was you're referring to this thing I just put up on the screen?
Right.
Yes, that 2.75 for townhomes includes everything. That's covered, not covered. And then this number here for the multifamily, 1.7, 2.2, you find the size of the units, the number of bedrooms, apply that ratio to whatever that number is, and that total also includes this 10% unassigned parking.
Okay. So total, 10% of the total is really 10% of all available parking.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions on that. I do not care for the waiver, and I don't like the waiver right now. I think maybe at some point in the future, but I think the waiver would be too easy a thing to just waive. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So just for clarification, Commissioner Steinle, you want to pull the waiver and you're in favor of leaving the covered parking in. I think the way this is worded now, the waiver would be...
Waiving the covered parking.
Leaving the covered parking in the ordinance, but adding this waiver.
That was the purpose of the waiver. The waiver is one step shy of a variation. That's essentially, they're not varying the number of parking spaces. They are removing the cover from them.
What would they have to do to qualify for that waiver?
The way it is worded in here, let's see.
They just have to prove it's non-economic to do it, basically.
Right.
The total amount of parking meets or exceeds the minimum standard, so they'd first have to show that they have the sum of the bedroom requirement. Parking lot is adequately screened from roadways and adjacent properties. And number 3, the developer has provided documentation to illustrate the amount of covered parking to be provided is consistent with projected demand. Just the consensus of the commission to leave covered parking in. These are the same types of questions they would need for a variation.
And before I ask for any more questions, it's really 2 things that we're asking for, and I'll do this right now. Is it the board, as Andrew just said, is it the consensus to leave covered parking in the ordinance? Commissioner Dorban?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to go over the 2.75 parking spaces and the one covered. First of all, in a townhome, we shouldn't be having one covered parking space. We should require 2-car garages, just like we do with single-family homes. That's my one concern. And the other thing is 10% is, I really don't think 10% is enough. I'm going to use my complex because I'm the only person that lives in that kind of an environment. We have 25 townhomes, and we have 13 unassigned parking spaces. Now, I realize we're unusual. I realize that that's probably 50%, which is way too much, but I think 10% is not enough. I can tell you for a fact, we have people, single gentlemen who have 2 cars and they have stuff, okay? We have one gentleman who has 2 cars, a garage full of stuff, and so he's using both parking pads. When the snow comes down, you need places to put that snow. Last year alone, we had a piece of snow equipment that took up 1 parking space. People moved their cars into the open spaces so they could get their driveways cleaned, takes up the parking space, and we used 4 or 5 spaces for snow to pile it up. So I think, based on the fact that I live in that kind of environment, I just don't think it's enough. The other piece of it is if we're thinking about going forward and raising the bar and having larger units down the road to, again, raise the bar for our condo or townhome or whatever we're planning on doing for the future, we are going to need those 2 covered parking spots. So I have concern about that in a lot of areas. The other piece of that is that goes down the road. Do we have things that are coming forward that we don't know about as a commission that maybe we should think about until this is all settled and the board's approved it, that maybe we should ask the trustees for a moratorium on anything like this until this is set up? Those are just some of my concerns.
Okay, so, and I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Terry's got something too.
I'll get to you in a second. So you feel that covered parking should stay in the ordinance, in the title, that section, correct?
And increased, actually.
Yes, I heard that.
Okay.
Well, increase, you've asked for an increase in unassigned parking.
Pardon me?
I think you asked for an increase in unassigned parking.
No.
She also said
no.
2-car garages.
2-car garages, just like we do require for all
Okay.
single-family homes.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're right, I missed that. And then you asked for an increase in the unassigned parking,
Correct.
and then you would not be in favor of a waiver of the covered parking.
Correct.
Okay, cool, thank you. So 10% is not enough, and then also increasing the covered parking. Okay.
This particular poll that you began is relating to the non-townhome first, correct? Can we take that, can we take the multifamily, non-townhome, and then so we got 2 different requirements. Now that we're separating them, can we take the polls on them so that we can make sure we're...
And that was what I was going to say, Jim. If you read number 1, I think the second sentence says the consensus of the Plan Commission was to reduce the parking for multifamily buildings other than townhomes. So I don't know. Pam was talking about having having garage parking for 2 cars for townhomes.
Correct.
And that's not what we're really
Well, but the first...
talking about, I don't think,
Well, I guess I was confused the way this is laid out, because the first one, it says multifamily, and then townhome is highlighted, and the description is next to it, And my understanding, we were commenting on that section.
Okay, I can see your confusion, yes.
So what was done, just to clarify, what was done, multifamily, as of today in the code, this blue, anything blue here doesn't exist.
Anything blue what?
The
Does not
blue, the
exist.
blue stuff is not in the current code. It's being added with this proposed amendment. So right now, all multifamily this is the standard for all multifamily. So what we're suggesting is, based on our previous workshops, split out townhomes and non-townhomes. So that would be townhome and other, so that they would be separated under the code, recognizing it's a different development style, different development type. The physical site plan tends to be different. The amount of space that somebody would require for unassigned parking, you might want to make sure that it's distributed evenly around the different parts of the development. So recognizing that they have different needs, different development styles, separate townhome from multifamily, from the other multifamily. So that's perhaps the part of the confusion. So what I believe your poll was on the other for now. Is this covered, staying in, yes or no? And then related to that is there a desire to have this waiver added to the code?
Now I'm really confused, because if we're cleaning this up, aren't we cleaning it all up? Or
I'm not suggesting not to clean it up. I'm suggesting that it's confusing to add 4 issues together.
Yeah, I'm
when you've
doing
got-
that. I'm confusing the issue in the way I'm saying it, okay? So, how can we do this?
So the question, if you take, my suggestion would be in this, take the poll on this multifamily other. Is it the consensus of the commission to continue requiring covered parking for apartment buildings and condominiums? That would be my suggestion of the first poll.
Okay. So covered parking for anything other than townhomes.
So apartments.
okay, we're talking about multifamily, other, and other.
Other.
Okay, okay, just want to make sure we're talking about.
So
Okay.
back to covered parking. Should that stay in there?
Yes. And I just, when we're doing that, we need to define what 10% is, or how that's calculated.
And I think,
We'll do that next, continue the poll.
right. So, and allowing, should we allow the waiver verbiage in our title? Waiver of the covered parking.
Repeat that again.
Mr. Jennings put in a waiver,
Okay,
okay, that could be allowed for a developer to attempt to waive the covered parking on multifamily other.
he could put in a request, but it would still have to come before the commission for approval, correct?
Right, it would.
Okay.
But it gives them the option. So,
But so does the variation.
so does the
What's the
variation.
difference between a variation and this waiver request?
right,
Probably the biggest difference is for
Public
With-
notice?
Would the village board
it's public
have to-
notice. It's site plan, if you had a site plan change on a building, an existing building, and it triggered the requirement for the parking review, they would need, as the code's written right now, they would need to inform all of their neighbors that they're seeking a variation. I mean, that's probably the person who's going to be most impacted. So it's not a huge difference procedurally, except that they would have to provide notice.
I mean, most things are going to come in of that kind of size and magnitude, I would believe would come in as a PUD, which there are no, everything is a a waiver. I mean, there aren't any variations. I just think, let it come in as a PUD if it's a PUD, and if it isn't a PUD, then they go through the variation process like everybody else does.
Commissioner Dorman, hearing that,
I would agree with what Terry is saying. Leave it as a PUD, and if it's a variation, they want to come in.
Commissioner Johnson?
I would say leave the waiver verbiage in.
Okay. Commissioner Powers?
Leave the waiver verbiage in.
And you want the covered parking still in there, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
Commissioner.
otherwise you wouldn't need the waiver.
Right, that's true. Commissioner Schaaf?
I'm in favor of leaving the covered parking in and removing the waiver, taking that out. Or not putting it in, I guess that would be more true.
And I am in favor of removing the waiver verbiage.
And leaving covered parking in.
Yes.
To sum up, just to make sure I got it, leaving covered parking in, yes, and remove the waiver language that had
Yes.
been drafted.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So the next question then, there's a suggestion made that while we're looking at these two requirements here, having now split out townhomes and non-townhomes, there was a suggestion made that a townhome, this number, one, now that they're separate, they could have a different requirement.
Yes.
Is there consensus to increase that number to 2?
I personally want, to Commissioner Dorban's comments, that leaves it open to having a one-car garage and a covered parking. I would like to see the verbiage that indicates that they're two-car garages, like we have on single-family.
Right. And then you get 2 spaces in the drive that,
Right.
then 10% for guests beyond the 4 parking spaces that you have on premise should be, don't you think, Pam?
Well, 10%, but that was one of my questions. Andrew, taking my complex of 25 units, what would 10% of the 25 be? For
9, I believe.
of
7.
unassigned?
So that's a lot of math to do. Hang on.
But Pam, if you have 2 garages
Yes.
and 2 driveway spots, that'll cover 4
Well, that-
cars per unit.
So really, you're saying the total has to
100,
be
and
4 per unit,
And-
Right.
not
and-
2.75.
Exactly, and then the 10% is really,
Huge.
yeah, it's
The
street
10%
parking.
is how much?
The current code for a 25-unit townhome would be 7 visitor spaces. So that's outside of a driveway, outside of a garage,
Per unit?
7
No.
total. So 25,
For-
those
for a
25
25
units, you have to have 7
And
totally
7,
unassigned.
I can see 7. I think that, I guess I have some concerns about 7. I would like to see a couple more, but 7 is more doable than what I was anticipating or what I thought, how this read.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm the only one that lives in this kind of an environment, and if there was only 7 parking spaces, 5 of them would have been utilized, that meant that only 3 would have been available in the middle of the winter. And that's my argument, is that that's why I think it should be more. Because we're getting, we want more and more green space as we build these areas. Well, if we want more green space, that's great, but where are these people going to park if we're not giving them some extra? I mean, I don't know. I just, I guess I could live with the 7. I just would like to see it more.
But if we changed it, Pam, to this
It's actually
2
10.
garaged and 2 driveway oriented,
That's 4.
then you'd still have to come up with some percentage of the computation. It'd probably be less than 10% now to get to that same number.
It is, because if you have what did you use as an example, 25 units?
Yes.
25 units times 4 is 100.
Right?
So if you took this, if you
But
took
they don't do
townhomes
by
up to
100, 'cause
4,
that's what I said would be 10, because I was thinking the same thing. That's the way I did the calculations, that it would be 10 if you used 100.
Right,
Yeah, right.
so that would be 10.
Which would be, I think 10 is good, but that's not the way Andrew calculates it.
How did
well,
you
I guess the
calculate
question
7?
is, if the desire is to go to 4 per unit on townhomes, if it's a townhome development, and you assume a 2-car garage in every single one, and 2 driveway spaces in every single
Right.
one, you're essentially saying that's 4 per unit.
Right.
And then you can rephrase this any way you want at that point. I mean, you could say 4 per unit. 2 of that 4, 2 must be in a garage. And then on top of that,
I mean, you don't really need, assuming that you could have potentially two guests park in your driveway, you would just need a few extra parking spaces on the street or around to.
Except you have people who have children, and here, a perfect example, we have a single guy who had his daughter living with him. He had 2 cars. They both were parked on the apron because he had stuff in his garage. His daughter was living with him. She took up another parking space. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like this domino effect. And if that's the case, then we had 5 utilized for snow or snow equipment. And then here's the 6th one. And if you only had 7, you'd have 1 space left. If you have 10, then that's a different story.
Somebody raised their hand.
I did.
Commissioner Schaaf.
The more you talk, you're assuming that you're going to provide an apron for the garage.
Oh,
And that's not necessarily true.
that's true, because we do have some complexes where you couldn't park a car on the apron.
The garage is right at the curb.
Well, if we're going to have upscale units, maybe we should stipulate that we're going to have 4 parking.
Then you would have to
Spots.
then you would have to stipulate the 4.
That's right.
Well, that's what we said.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jennings.
that particular issue, the parking pad size is defined. A new development, to call it a parking pad, has a minimum dimension now. It did not previously have a minimum dimension. So over the last 2 or 3 years, we added a parking. You can't call it parking unless it's
Okay,
20 feet.
so with that said, what we're saying is it's actually 4 spaces per unit. 2 have to be, well, it's almost the same wording as what you have in, for a single-family home. Which was 2 garage spaces per dwelling unit and 2 additional spaces per dwelling unit. No, then that leaves it open to being unassigned parking too.
I'm just afraid that if we don't, arrange that we have 2 garage parking spaces and 2 apron spaces and enough guest parking, that with the snow removal or equipment that might, a landscaper might leave on the premises, that we're going to end up with people parking in the street. And quite honestly, if you think about Brookvale by itself, if we had people parking on the street, we could not get a fire truck down that street. We'd have a real issue.
Is there parking allowed on the street at Brookvale?
No, well, yeah, because it's not posted, because we're a PUD, it's not posted, they can't park there. So, and some of our cul-de-sacs are very narrow. So if people started doing that, we would have a real issue. A fire truck could not get through. And that, I guess that's, I hate to keep using our little complex.
Yeah, nor
but-
could you plow the street.
Pardon me?
Nor could you plow the street then.
Right. Well, the village doesn't plow our streets. We have to plow our own.
Well,
But we
somebody
couldn't-
does.
Exactly. And that's why I'm saying that we need to really think, hard about the unassigned parking spaces. Now, like I said, 50% was way too much as far as I'm concerned, but, some happy medium in there.
What are you writing there, Andrew?
I'm doing some math behind the podium.
Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain.
But see, I think to your point, Jim, you said you figured 100 and using 10%, that would be 10. But I don't think that's how Andrew's doing his calculations. But I would think 10 would be fine, 10% of that amount.
10% of the 4 per unit? Yes, yes.
Okay, I don't know if this is large enough to read, but let me see if I can make it a little bit larger. Okay, here's one option based on this discussion. Townhome developments would then be required 4 spaces per unit, of which 2 per unit must be garaged. The additional unassigned visitor parking will be provided at a ratio of 0.4 per unit. And then the required visitor parking must be off-street, separate from parking pads, and evenly distributed throughout the site. So using the example of a 25-unit, now you're taking all the spaces that are for the unit are in that 4 now, the 2 garage, 2 not garage. Now this 0.4 per unit is on top of that. So 0.4 per unit on 25 units gets you 10 visitor spaces in a 25 unit. Keeping in mind, of course, that everybody does have to provide 2 driveway spaces. So
I didn't come up with that number. So if you have a 25 units, that's 100
On premise.
on premise. 100 parking spaces on premise.
that are assigned to the units.
Right.
Then-
And then you're taking 0.04 of 100?
0.4.
0.4. Yeah,
0.4 additional
Times 25.
unassigned, so 0.4 times 25.
I'm sorry. Per unit. I was thinking,
I was thinking the same thing you were thinking until you said it that way.
I think that meets Pam's criteria.
I think it does.
but then, why did you go a ratio on multifamily and a percentage, on multifamily townhome, and then a percentage on other?
It was the way the old code was written. I just used the thing that was most similar to the old code.
Okay.
The current code, I should say.
Okay.
I used what was most similar to the existing language.
So is everybody?
There is no, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, you were going to probably add something better than I was, so go ahead.
I was going to say there is no, while we are in the middle of revising that section, I see no particular reason to not have it say what the commission would like for it to say.
Okay. Is everybody okay with what is written for multifamily townhome?
I have a question.
I have a question.
Commissioner Powers.
Okay, so let me ask you this. We adopt this and it goes forward, and then the developer comes in if he wants to deviate from this, what does he have to do? Let's say he doesn't want to do 4 spaces per unit, he maybe wants a 1-car garage. What are his options?
It would be a variation of the zoning code. Or it would be code relief associated with a PUD, if there was a PUD that had townhomes in it.
I mean, I guess I'm okay with this, but I kind of wonder, like, if the town center ever comes to fruition, we start putting up townhomes, downtown, and it gets pretty packed, I mean, what happens? We tell everybody you got to put a big parking garage underneath, or, to come up with this? Or
Remember, this is townhomes. It's not condos.
Okay.
So that's the difference when you start.
I guess I'm okay, you can leave it this way, but, I just don't know if we're gonna we may lose business because of it, but that's where I am.
I think between the two of them, the two scenarios, the one that's most likely to have an impact is what you're doing with multifamily, other than townhomes. The townhomes, I think, you're probably more likely to have a developer propose something closer to what you're discussing right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on nothing other than observation.
Well, we just had one built on Wolf Road. That was all 2-car garages. The proposal that we had for the townhomes on
Cross Lane.
Milwaukee Avenue, that was all 2-car garages. So I think that's the norm. So Commissioner Stalin.
Let me throw a monkey wrench into Pam's computations now and ask her for her opinion. The 2 spaces that must be garaged have now been, one has been turned into a 4th bedroom, and the other garage space has been turned into a junk room. So the only places that the residents have to park are indeed their 2 pads, which is okay because they might only have 2 cars. But then is that 10 or 0.04 per unit going to be capable of covering that?
Well, if that's the case, don't we have an ordinance against people making a garage a living space? And,
It would violate this code requirement.
pardon me?
You would not meet this code. If you convert your space illegally, this code would have been violated. You do not have 2 spaces garaged if you convert it to living space.
But don't we have an ordinance against that?
Yes.
And do
This
we?
is one of them.
Okay, do
This
we
would be-
have any kind of an ordinance that says that you cannot use your garage for total storage? I don't know how we would ever police that, but,
No, because if they have a boat or a
Exactly,
camper or something
exactly.
like that, that's where they're going to
so we
put it.
can't do that, but as long as we have an ordinance against people using it as living space.
I know a number of garages in town that are used for bedrooms, so.
Well, but we can't
No,
put that into
all I'm saying
an
is-
ordinance. We'd be here all
I don't
night
think that's
trying to
legal.
figure.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
All I'm saying is, assuming that 1% of the population might do that, would that influence the 0.4?
I don't know how you'd police that. I really don't. I mean, I just think our village ordinances would have to, cover people not using their garages as
Got a route, your
another
neighbors.
bedroom. And I mean, otherwise, how would we know that? I mean, yeah, there might be people doing it, but I don't know how. I know there are codes that say you can't do those kinds of things, but do we follow it? I
Well, if
don't
the
know.
townhome had their own association, they would have better control over it than anybody.
That's probably true. I like that.
Not really.
There's some townhome developments that are very strict on what you can and can't do.
Well, we're pretty strict, but we're, we've never had that issue, so I can't address that.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I like the way it's written, multifamily townhome. I like that.
Thank you.
I think, generally speaking, I didn't hear anyone object to the current suggestion on townhomes.
Right.
And the multifamily other, which would be apartment and condo style buildings, was the consensus at our last workshop. Are there any questions on that one before we move on?
The only question I have about this is, do we have anything that you can share with us coming down the road that we think we should put a moratorium on this until this is approved? Because if this is what we want to do and something comes in the meantime, we don't have any control over that.
The only items that I'm aware of that are coming down the road would be a PUD. So they would be looking for whatever they feel is appropriate.
Okay, so it would affect this?
The one that I'm aware of is a other. It's an apartment style PUD, and it would meet the requirement there, except for they would ask for code relief on the number of. They're not proposing a one-to-one on the garage spaces, so they would be asking for part of that PUD relief to be a reduction in the number of covered spaces, but they would have had to do that regardless. They would be in line with everything else that's being proposed here.
So we would be covered by not having this approved before we went on with any other projects, am I correct?
That's correct. Well, this hearing is.
I don't want to have us get into a sticky wicket where we've, not gotten this approved and we've got somebody coming in.
There are not so many that the speed at which people can propose something like that, we're usually aware of them in advance. The one that I'm referring to has already gone through workshop review. It's already gone through concept with the Plan Commission once. It's gone through concept with the board once. And there's no other one that's going to leapfrog that. So I think we're pretty confident that that's the one development where we would probably receive an application from them before this could get through the final board approval. But we will call them. I mean, we're talking about one. We'll call them and tell them what the Plan Commission consensus was. So they'll be aware of it.
Yes.
We're talking multifamily other now, or?
Yes.
Andrew, I'd like to balance the multifamily townhome in the same line that the multifamily other is balanced. If you say that, let's say on average, just rule of thumb, 2 spaces per unit, and there's 25 units, a la to compare it to the last example, that would give you 50 spaces per unit. And then I'd like to come up with that same 110 number that you allocated for the townhouse development.
I did not follow that.
Neither did I.
Well, for the townhouse, we managed to come up with, for a 25-unit entity,
Okay.
110 parking spaces. Correct?
Okay.
For the same 25-unit multifamily other, and let's just say the average is two spaces per your calculation, right? One unit or 2 bedrooms.
That's an unattainable standard. I mean, you're asking for people to park a apartment building at 4. Is it out your?
So a 2-bedroom
It's an
townhouse
off-the-charts
and a-
requirement.
and a two-bedroom townhouse. But the townhouse, those two pad spaces were for guests as well as owner use. You know, that was part of the guest parking.
I guess I don't see where we're going with that. I mean, the other one, the townhome is a new discussion for today, but this multifamily other, we did 3 workshops on it, and this is the end result of those 3 workshops. And the purpose of it was to reduce the parking requirement closer to a projection of actual demand, and to go from 1.7 and 2.2 up to 4 would be the opposite of what we set out to do at the beginning.
I hear you, but, you know, if you're saying for the townhouse that you require 4 per unit and the same two-bedroom.
No, I'm not saying that. You
Condo.
all
So that, yeah, we said it.
We didn't, staff didn't say anything about townhomes.
We said it. That's what we went with.
Just
Remember,
now.
they had the tables.
Well, it used to
with
be
all of the-
3.75
Right.
or something like that.
Okay, so Andrew?
Yes.
I guess we're going to have to workshop this piece again, because apparently we didn't get it, because I know we reduced it, we did it at
Right.
this level, and now we're backing off of that, and we're increasing it instead of decreasing it. So,
I did not hear a consensus on it.
well, that's true. That's true. So, okay, so Commissioner Steinle, say again what you're looking for here, because
All I'm saying is that for comparative purposes, if you took the calculations for the multifamily other, for the same 25-unit entity that needed 2 cars average per unit, that would give you 50 cars, plus 10% for an assigned would be 55. We need 110 for a townhome of the same kind of size, and for multifamily other, we're saying we need 55. And it just seems to me to be a rather large difference
I think
between the two.
If I could just interject one thing, I think that the site plan distinction that led to separating the 2 out is the same distinction that you can call on now to justify having different requirements. The issues that you run into in a townhome development are location of vehicles. The 2.75, part of the issue is distribution. And we've been tweaking that over the last 3 or 4 years, talking about how big a parking pad has to be, because it becomes so small that it's not useful. So I think doing this, you're addressing them separately, which I think is in line with what we've been working toward the last couple of years. I think we've been getting toward this idea that they have different needs. Townhome development has a different physical layout that drives the need for a parking requirement that's related to the way a townhome development is physically laid out. So I think that it's perfectly acceptable to have a number that's unique for each development style in this case.
Wasn't that like the chart you put up for Woodland Creek, and you have like 3 or 4 different examples? And
Yes.
Isn't that where that was derived from? I thought we kind of
did.
derived these numbers from that discussion, right?
We did. We had, the original staff suggestion on that was actually slightly lower than this. We showed, I think, 3 different requirements. The 1.7 and the 2.2 were, based on that research, what the Planning Commission was most comfortable with.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're right, Andrew. You didn't hear consensus. So I'm just going to ask the question. On the multifamily other, the calculations we have here, 1.7 unit per 1 bedroom, 2.2 spaces, 2 or more, of which 1 is covered and 10% are unassigned. Commissioner Dorband, that definition. Are you okay with that?
Well, I'm okay with that, except for, I think the 10% unassigned needs to be looked at again. And I don't know how to, I just think that I might be too low.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
I think that we talked about this in length several times, and I'm happy with the results that he's got here.
Commissioner Stylen.
I'm okay with the exception of the 10%.
Commissioner Powers.
I'm good with the way it is.
Commissioner Schaaf.
I'm good with the numbers 1.7 and 2.2. I'm good with the 10%. I would like to see covered be garaged. That's all.
For apartment buildings?
For an apartment.
Yep. You talk about raise the bar, raise the bar.
Well, yeah, but that's one of the reasons we were talking about reducing the bar a little bit so we could actually get some developers interested.
The number of spaces is fine. Or instead of one covered, make it half or whatever. But the covered doesn't make it with me. I like garaged. And maybe work on that aspect. The 1.7 and 2.2 and 10%, I really don't have a problem with.
I don't have a problem with this either. But I truly have a problem with your definition of covered.
Yeah, that opened up a new twist.
Do we have a definition for covered, Andrew, at all?
No, the only one that is specifically garaged is senior housing. Everything else, the word is covered, and we've interpreted that to mean garage in the building, garage on the side of the building, or a carport.
But not a tent or canvas covered
It would still have to
permanent
meet our.
structure.
Correct.
Can I ask a question? Why are we reducing our standards exactly? I mean, to accommodate a developer? Is that what we're looking at? Because other villages do it? If we're going to raise the bar, then let us raise the bar in our village.
I guess what I find frustrating is that we've had 2 workshops about
Yep.
this, and
You're
we reduced it, and we were all in agreement in doing that. And what we did is we had graphs and we had tables of what all towns around here and our existing apartment complexes had, and we were well over those numbers. So we were trying to reduce them. But if what I'm hearing, we just wasted hours upon hours of workshopping.
I guess when in my own defense, I'll say that I guess until I read it the way it's written here, I didn't interpret it the same way. And maybe I misinterpreted it right from the get-go. And so now when I see it written like this, I'm saying I have a question about the townhome piece of it. The multifamily, it's because of the way it's written that, like I said, maybe from the get-go, I'm confused. And, in honesty, I don't like to be compared to any other village except my own. So that's.
But we had complexes.
I understand, you're absolutely right.
We had complexes from all over the place.
I understand.
And we spent all of this time specifically, and we specifically talked about reducing it to 1.7 spaces per unit, 2.2 spaces per unit on the 2-bedroom or more.
I don't have a problem with that. It's the unassigned. I think that in looking at this the way it's written, that's my interpretation. I mean, and maybe, like I said, right from the beginning, I did not interpret it that way. So, until it's, I'm only one vote. Everybody can.
Andrew, is the 10%, is that like a baseline? Can it be deviated from by some method if a developer were to come in here for some reason? And it's like, oh, well, 10%, that's not enough. We're gonna need like 20%. I mean, I don't know.
Unfortunately, most likely, they're looking for more space to build stuff and
Yeah, right.
less parking, so I don't think you're
that
gonna
was the whole thing. I think parking spaces, I think you explained to us, parking spaces meant dollars that the developer necessarily didn't want to spend, and that's why you came in here with the figures and said, well, this is way over allocated, and I think that's how we trimmed it to come to some of these numbers.
But Steve, do we care about the developer, or do we care about our village? I personally, I mean, the developer's gonna come in here, build something and get out, and we're stuck with whatever it is. So we better make sure we're happy with what we put in here. And that's my feeling. We have to live here. We have to look at it 20 years from now.
So what this says, if you had a 200-unit apartment building, maybe it's 4 buildings, 200 units, all of which are 2-bedroom. So if you had a 200-unit building and they were all 2 bedrooms,
Yeah, but that's not the reality.
It's just,
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to put something together. I don't know
what this translates into is you're looking at 444 total parking spaces. Okay? Out of all of that, all this says is that 44 of those can't be directly assigned to a unit. It's just making sure, the likelihood of assigned parking covering 400, you're really unlikely to see the open parking, especially, is really rare to see it assigned. I'm trying to think of any development in town that has surface parking that is assigned. I can't think of one. It's not.
Colonial, they've got numbered parking spots.
So there's one. But I mean, in the developments, it's not
Andrew,
typical, I would say.
unfortunately, I don't think we're getting consensus on this, because we've got issues with the unassigned. We've got questions about covered, and then we've got questions about the actual spaces per unit. Right now, there's 3 of us who are in favor of this exact verbiage, and the other 3 have variations of these numbers.
Is there a number of unassigned parking that anyone would like to suggest? Because I think we can, if we're going to continue this and put it off, I'd like to look at a number. If the idea of having 44 out of 444 or 440 is not right.
It's a lot.
We're not talking about, I guess what I'm trying to define is what the issue is.
Right.
What is inappropriate about 10% of the
What I'm hearing
spaces?
is, I'm hearing 2 commissioners saying that there's not, in general, enough parking. Commissioner Stylen is saying that there's not enough, well, actually, they're probably about the same, because Commissioner Stylen is looking for a ratio that's going to increase the unassigned, and Commissioner Dorband is also saying the same thing. But what Commissioner Dorband is saying, she's okay with the 1.7 and 2.2, but increase in the unassigned. Commissioner Stylen is going down the path of increasing the spaces per unit.
No, I just want to increase that 10%.
Okay, so he was going with a ratio, you were going with a ratio to try to get there. Commissioner Dorband was going with a percentage to get there, probably the same general item, okay?
So the total number of parking, we're fine with. It's just out of that number, how many can't be assigned to a unit?
Right, the unassigned. But before we go there, okay, Commissioner Schaaf brought up the comment about garages for this type of development, multifamily, other. Commissioner Dorban, your definition of covered.
Garage.
Commissioner Johnson?
Well, what's on the books now is anything that has a roof over your car.
Right.
And
Okay,
yeah, that's it.
okay. Commissioner Styling?
I would say a roof over,
Okay.
not necessarily a garage.
Commissioner Powers?
Same, roof over.
And Commissioner Schaaf, we know what you want. You want garage, and I would say a roof over. So we're going with covered being a roof over. So now the question is the unassigned.
From the perspective of, if you take unassigned parking from the perspective of a resident, it's how many out of the total parking spaces, how many are they going to have access to being theirs? So if you're a resident of an apartment building, it's atypical to have an assigned space anyway, so it's not going to be an issue. If you're a resident of a condo building, you may own one spot or have a limited access spot, and then what's left is left. So if the issue is the number that are unassigned out of that total, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's going to matter to the residents or to someone who's building it. If it's a total number anyway, I think any percentage, just keeping in mind, of course, that what's left over is what could be assigned. So 90% could be assigned under this.
Jim, question. I mean, to go on your example of 200 or 400 unit building, I don't have any problems with a 10% ratio for something like that. In your professional opinion, how big would a typical multifamily development that we're talking about here be? My concern would be if it was a 25 unit building having only 5 visitor parking spaces or 5 delta would be too small. So I'm concerned about the small.
Like a 6 flat.
Exactly. Not something that's in the 200 or 400. I think that like a large shopping center will indeed balance it out. But what do you think a typical average size we're talking about is?
I think the typical is probably in the 40 plus range. I think you're looking at the 6 flat being fairly unlikely, just because of the limited land availability. Building multifamily, the trend has been kind of away from that. You might see one every now and then, but we've had one 6 flat proposed in 9 years, and they didn't build it after they got approved for it. So I think you're probably looking at more than the 6 flats. The 6 flat, by the way, assuming they're all 2 bedrooms or more, has a parking requirement of 14, and then 10% of 14 comes down to 2. So they basically need 2
spots.
Two
on a sign.
I think it dies. You know, is there any chance that we could divide it up into units greater than, or
say the number of? You could do something. I mean, a simple, no fewer than 5. You know, you could have a 10% on a sign.
Yeah,
in no case shall there be
yeah.
fewer than 5 on a sign.
Yeah.
See, I'd just be a lot more comfortable with something like that. It's the little guys.
That's a good point. There's the smaller ones that wouldn't make it.
And anybody that wants to put up a 6 flat would have to get a variation, because they'd be looking at 17 spaces for.
Well, and maybe that's a good point, Andrew. If somebody were to come in and build a 10-unit building, would they go with our minimum
parking recommendation, or do you think they would go with a few extra to accommodate their?
Depends on what kind of land they've got. With the availability of land, I think they would probably just go ahead and build it. Once you're building a parking lot for 20 spaces, you could build it for 24 if you have the land for it. This addresses the 6-flat loophole, I think. You'd end up with,
Yes.
17, that would be 14 and 5 19 spots on a 6-flat, all 2 bedrooms. Because it'd be 13, it'd be 14, and
1.7.
then 5, it's 19. Right?
I mean, I'm thinking out what happens to the other spaces because this did not increase the number. It took spaces away from being assigned. So let me just think for 1 second about how to phrase that to avoid that.
But it still doesn't address okay. I think we have,
This is good for like a 20 unit.
Yeah, Pam and I have
doesn't
now
do anything for a
differentiated our
6-flat.
concerns, so.
right, because Commissioner Dorban brings up the point of not enough unassigned spots. Correct? Right. And that's what you were going at, right, Commissioner Dorban?
Correct.
Okay. I don't know how to, I mean, what is a?
Maybe we just let Andrew noodle on.
Well, what happens if you just increase the 10% to a greater number?
Or you put a minimum in there, whichever is greater.
But the issue is unassigned. How many of them are not directly assigned to a unit? I guess the question is, what's the end goal? If I knew the end goal, we can continue this, come back next month, and have your charts done.
Here's the thing. I think there are 4 commissioners on this board that are okay with the 10%. And 2 commissioners that are not. So if we went with that, the way it is right now would be fine. Because we've covered the covered. The consensus was that a roof over it. And the consensus was that the 10% was okay. And Commissioner Schaaf, you said that 10% was okay.
10% is okay.
Commissioner Powers, you said the 10% was okay.
Yep.
I said the 10% was okay, and Commissioner Johnson said the 10% was
Yes.
okay. And we added this. So let's go with this.
I mean, I hit save, it's going to be final.
Pardon?
I hit save, it's over.
I hate, I'm going to throw one more monkey around. I may as well throw it in here.
Why not? I mean, that's why we're having this dialogue, because.
I understand, we spent a lot of time on this in the past, and I don't disagree, and I apologize for my part in misunderstanding. But if we're going to do this, doggone it, I want to do it right, okay? And that's how I feel. And my one little piece of this is, okay, everybody agreed that you want a roof over is okay. But my question, and I just want to hear from all of you, is that really what we want it to look like here? Is that really raising the bar? I just want to hear you all tell me that you think that's okay. I really do. And that's not raising the bar to me. If it is to all of you, that's fine. If that's what you want to see in our village, and we want to live with this 15 years from now or 20 years from now, I just want to hear you say that to me.
I guess from my perspective, when we look at something like Wine Tree that has virtually no use for underground parking, I think covered parking would have a better use than that. That's my take on it.
Which development are you talking about?
Is it Wine Tree? Wheeling Road and Palatine Road?
Oh, no.
Woodland Creek.
Oh,
Woodland Creek. Woodland Creek, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Woodland Creek.
There is a wine.
There is a wine tree
It's not
somewhere in this
There is a
town.
wine tree.
There is a
I think
wine
it's in
tree.
Buffalo Grove.
Oh, that's right, okay.
We tap,
That was one of the
tap
ones.
into it
It
now.
started with a W. It started with a W. So,
Okay, let me answer Pam's question. I have no problem with covered being covered, but I would like to see the minimum size of the units expanded. I think that would be a much better upscale, raise the bar development than underground parking. I agree that underground parking may not be a big seller.
I thought we had raised the minimum on our
No.
apartments.
No, because everybody had it the same, and I brought that conversation up before, and they said that was what it was. People have come in, and they've had a little bit bigger, but not by much. And that was still my argument back then, when they came into us.
And I think those sizes are still on my small list, so.
So Commissioner Johnson, as far as covered parking.
You know, when we first started talking about this, I felt like the covered parking was holding back any developers from even talking to us based on what the research that Andrew showed us. The expense, the fact that they can't sell garage space except for a couple months a year, so they don't want to put the investment out because they're never going to get their money out of it, and they move on to another town.
But what does that do with the space that's available?
It's still available.
They would be more likely to put up a townhome then, or single family.
Not that developer, because he's already moved on.
I understand.
Commissioner Powers.
I agree with Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Schaff, I know how you feel about it. So I guess, you know, in general, we're okay with the covered parking.
Okay? I just,
No, it's a good point. It's a good point.
You always have the opportunity under site plan review to look at where it is and what it looks like.
Yep. So are we going with this that's right here? Yes,
I believe it was the sum of the various polls.
yes.
All right, let me go back to the beginning of this. Can I go back to the beginning of this? All right, item 2.
Oh, please don't count them off.
Right. These I can probably present together. The shopping center parking reduction, we looked at raising the absolute minimum. We had put the absolute minimum in. It's below the number of existing shopping centers. Commission asked us to take a look at that and find an absolute minimum threshold that was it would be closer to the reality. So that's the number that we talked about at the last workshop. The 3.75 and 3.6. The other part of that was the threshold for being considered for these reductions. Each reduction, the medium reduction and the large reduction, a medium shopping center, we had started at 20,000 square feet. Consensus of the commission was to use 40,000 instead, making the 20 to 40,000 range not eligible for a reduction other than the variation process. The larger shopping centers, our consensus was to start that at 60,000 rather than 50,000. The other item that we took that was related to this was the anchor tenant requirement. As you recall, we were looking at a requirement that would be related to the special use requirement. There's a special use threshold for retailers at 20,000 square feet. Consensus of the commission was at that point, it's a large enough store that we should consider, regardless of the type of store that it is, we should consider the employee parking because it would have a large enough impact on the shopping center. Are there any questions on those two? That would be item 2 and 3.
Anyone? Nope.
Nope.
Administrative review of outdoor dining, we were asked to reduce the red tape, I guess, on outdoor dining. There was a concern that there would be a possibility for abuse, so we took an additional measure on this to have a maximum number of seats that could be approved administratively if there are no indoor seats. Other than that, I think that this is actually verbatim from the last workshop.
Yep. Any questions on that one?
No.
No.
Yeah, I do have a question. I mean, I'm again concerned about adding parking to a unit that doesn't have any, let's say they only have 2 seats today, you know, or 1 table, and now we're going to add 15 outside. What is that minimum delta that?
Let me just make this large enough to read. I believe it was 8. No more than 8 could be approved this way. I think it's actually in the parking requirement.
Yeah, I think I remember that too.
Okay, so this, I'll read this one while we're on it. What would be added instead of minor site plan and appearance review, we substitute this administrative review. As long as it doesn't have any permanent features, it could go through this administrative review. The larger ones with more than 15 seats would also go through the regular site plan review. And I believe the other requirement is inside our, inside the parking table. Sorry, I have the whole code attached to this, I think. Pretty close to it. So, this section. Didn't see it in there. Do you have the packet in front of you? Can somebody see that faster than I can see this?
I'm going to the same place you are. It's page 126.
Yeah.
Why is this doing this to me now? Have I done? Yes.
Oh, here, 109, businesses without indoor seats are limited to 8 seats unless specifically allowed to have additional seating? No, that's businesses without indoor seats.
Yeah, again, my concern is just a very small restaurant that may have only 8 seats to begin with, and now you're going to double their seating, but their parking requirements are super low, you know?
Yeah, it looks like on, I don't know, 109, it was like J2D, I think that's already 8 seats came up. That says businesses without indoor seats. That's where I think I read that too. Which is page 39 of the packet. I don't know if that's what you were referring to.
It's about as close as it comes, right?
Yeah. The top of packet, page 39.
Some sort of error in my navigation suddenly. All right, let's try that again.
Oh, but that's 8 seats, that's not parking.
Carryout businesses be limited to 8 seats.
Yeah, that's 8 seats, that's not parking.
You said it appeared on the next page of this?
Right there.
Right there. But that's, I guess
Alright.
that's seating. Yeah, I don't know, that doesn't address, I think, Commissioner Snelling, that's
Might,
parking.
might though.
Businesses without indoor seats are limited to 8 seats unless specifically allowed to have additional seating through the special use review process.
Is that what we're
It
talking?
said in the minutes from May 16th, you said in reply to Commissioner Silent's question, Mr. Jennings confirmed that 8 outdoor seats would require 3 parking spaces.
Okay.
So does this was intended to address that concern that, you know, you have an ice cream store, there would be some very small amount of outdoor seating you could have. Otherwise, if you want to go above that, you need to have it be part of the special use review.
Did you also state like one parking spot for each 3 seats? That's what was, you were gonna put?
The purpose
That's
of
what we're
this
waiving.
was to not make it difficult to do outdoor seating. So this was basically in the limited season that we have for outdoor seating,
Freebie.
just let it go.
Andrew, how do we calculate something like Chicago Bagel that has seating inside, but they also have seating outside?
The portion of the seats that are outside, that's inside, within that first number. So we basically look at the first 15 seats as a non-factor as far as parking is concerned. There's no parking requirement for the first 15.
There is no requirement for the first 15.
No, that's the code now. The question is what to do about the review. Do you have any sort of site plan review to be able to put some chairs out on the sidewalk at a shopping center? I don't think I'm fairly sure that nothing changed in this one from the discussion that we had.
Well, I mean, the only condition we have is that you must have some indoor seating in order to get free outdoor seating, right?
We have a small threshold. You can have a couple of seats, but not very many. It's 8 seats. You could have up to 8
Outdoor seats.
outdoor. If you're take a carry-out ice cream place that does not have, they have a counter, you order over the counter and you walk out, you could have a couple of benches outside, you could have 4 2-seat tables outside.
But you do have to have seats inside or not?
No.
No
If you're
seats at all.
carry out with 0 indoor seats,
Max you can have is 8.
Okay, I'll withdraw my comment, that's fine.
are there any other questions on this one? At the risk of angering the computer, I'm going to go back to the report. Okey-dokey. All right. Okay. I've really done something here. Okay, zoning code. All right. The next one is from the staff list of issues. We have residential plan unit developments that have been approved in the village. Somehow or another, in the 2005 code update, the residential PUD approval got limited and was actually restricted from the B districts. We have one Milwaukee Place, as an example, has a residential component. Under the absolute strict letter of the code today, that would not be possible. We don't see any major issue with this. It'd still be a PUD. We just want to make sure that it is possible to have residential units in a B district. I believe it's actually the B3 is the only one that this affects. Are there any questions on that? The next one, we made a judgment call. It seemed like there was consensus from the joint Plan Commission board meeting at the end of May. It seemed like there was consensus at that time to look into a more comprehensive update. So we decided, rather than trying to piece together an amendment that would accomplish this, let's put that off to the more comprehensive review. The next one, what I'd like to do is try on, this is the health club and recreational uses. I don't think it has had a major impact on the commission. So I think what I'd like to do is very briefly just describe what we're looking to do. Ms. Jones and I, over the last couple of years, have had to deal with this somewhat confusing situation in the code where you've got businesses that are, the very same business might be able to be classified 2 or 3 different ways, and we have assigned a use depending on, we've assigned this use classification for them depending on which zoning district they've chosen. I think that while it's been manageable, it's a little bit confusing. We discovered through this process that a couple of these uses overlap, and the zoning districts don't allow them if they're defined as one thing, but do if they define themselves as something else. So the purpose of this, as clunky as this amendment looks when you read it, the purpose of this is to clean that up, take recreational and educational things, these are the martial arts places, the small tutoring places, and define them more grouped on their size as opposed to the individual things that they might do. So the sports and recreation and the educational, you may find a small dance class, a small tutoring. So we're trying to group them a little bit more by that, requiring special use for the large ones. One of the interesting things that we noticed was that a health club was a permitted use. You define the things that are inside a health club would have been considered indoor sports and recreation, which would have been a special use. So somebody, although it didn't happen, somebody could have potentially applied as a health club, come in, and we wouldn't have looked at any of the attributes of the business. So I think this is good that we've found this when we did. Are there any questions on this one? I know it pulled a lot of different sections of the code.
Yeah, it did. What is it? Could you go to the section?
The,
You just like took it out of one table and moved it into another use, right?
we moved, this is the biggest piece of it is right here on the screen right now. So recreational and instructional facility is it assembles 3 or 4 different definitions from the code, takes them out of their current spot, and where they currently are located, we're going to leave in a reference that says, because people are going to look for the old uses. So if you go to some of these, personal instruction school is one that you guys have seen a lot of. That's small tutoring. You see specialty schools, which is the larger tutoring, the HVAC place. This kind of puts those definitions now are wiped out, and it just says C recreational instructional facility, and then it puts them all together, small and large. It just takes the small, the trend that we've been seeing is probably, we have the number right here, 12 participants and students and employees. So that's the sum of all occupants, the participants, the students and employees. Up to 12 we consider to be small, permitted use. It acts enough like retail and office that it's acceptable without any public hearing review. The larger ones can have an impact. You get overlap with people coming, dropping off, that sort of thing.
So where would Party Fantasy be?
The large.
Okay.
Special use wherever it's allowed.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that? No?
But this you won't see the biggest impact. The impact that this has had, that we have seen, is the small business wants to open. What they do is dance. And because they have a class of 8, they're not opening because the special use process is too much for them to manage. So they'll stop and find a new spot. So this, I think, probably you'll see a couple of places come in as a permitted use over the next year or so.
Okay.
Questions? Okay. This is based on a workshop. We had another business item relating to one of our service stations. The question posed to the commission was the particular service station was preparing to make an application, and the question was what type of application should this be? It was a zoning interpretation. The interpretation of the commission was essentially, this is acceptable. The code written the way that it is does not allow what this individual is trying to do. We tend to stay away from what you would consider to be a land use variation. So rather than have an individual apply for a variation that allows a prohibited use, my suggestion on this would be allow it, limit it to accessory, and require the review rather than having a variation process, which would amount to being a use variation. So this is, yes.
I personally don't like this. When we start talking about vehicles and within a screened outdoor area subject to minor site plan review at a minimum, I think there'll be too many abuses, personally.
The question that, just to reiterate the question and why we felt this was inappropriate, is that there was an appropriate solution, is that a service station already has, service stations in town have vehicle storage. People are able to drop their vehicle off, wait for a part, your vehicle is parked somewhere on the site. They're storing a vehicle by the definition of our code. What we were asked is, at that time, my customers' vehicles are being vandalized. How do we protect them? People are breaking their mirrors off while they're parked in our lot. We'd like to fence them. So the commission was, generally speaking, in agreement with allowing this. The mechanism for allowing it, though, I think is what we had an issue with, is how do we, if we can't authorize what amounts to a use variation, if you allow accessory, more clearly allowed as an accessory use, and require the site plan review for it to be screened, there's at least a review.
Andrew, I'll ask the same question this time that I asked last time. What is the difference then between an automobile repair facility and a service station? To me, you're starting to cross the line when you store cars for an indefinite period of time, outdoors, whatever. You're crossing the line into automobile repair. And I believe the petitioner that came before us, he wanted to store his snow plows and other stuff that I would consider to be a contractor's storage yard. So what is the difference between a service station with an accessory use of a contractor's storage yard? And I can understand if you're going to say a service station that is going to store cars for a day or two while it takes to get a part, that's one thing. Storing trucks, storing snow plows, storing items that are not accessories to his immediate service station business, I think, to me, is outside the bounds.
Well, it does say customer vehicles, and you could probably add something, like short-term storage or temporary storage to cover that concern.
We have no, there is no, on the side of staff, we have no proposal on this. This is if there's let me think if I can phrase this right. The request that was given to us was, this is what I would like to apply for. And we looked at it and said, well, first step is going to be a plan commission interpretation of what you're doing. We'll go seek that for you. We did that. The interpretation was, we're generally in favor of this. My experience with the code is you don't encourage people to apply for a variation that says essentially the prohibited use is okay. If there's general consensus that now seeing this is not okay, and I can find out from the attorneys if a use variation is okay. I've sent them that question. I haven't received a response. But this is not one of the staff items. This was just directly out of that workshop. So we have I can just as easily scrap this.
I have a greater question on not so much allowing it, but how the appearance of it. I mean, I can see where it could be a real mess, and it could look get real tacky real fast. So how do we control that if we allow this? I mean, they're going to want to put up maybe slats with, you know, wire fencing. I mean, that gets tacky real quick. It starts to rust, you know. I'm sure they're not going to want to put an expensive.
Board on board,
Yeah, exactly. So that, I mean, I'm looking at it from a different angle.
Well, I mean, that is a question of, if it goes at minimum minor site plan review, that the material of the fence would be a part of that package. And I think the commission could reject that and require it to be of a certain material. But like I said, this is something that if there is no consensus on allowing it, just scratch it out.
I would say scratch it. Commissioner Dorbett?
Herbie?
I think we should take this out right now and discuss it further. There's a lot rushing in even my head right now. Commissioner Johnson?
I agree.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Dorbett?
Take it out for now.
Yeah.
I agree.
And Commissioner Steinle, I saw you gave the thumbs down already. Commissioner Powers?
Yep, get rid of it.
And Commissioner Schaaf?
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, that one,
I believe that is it.
okay. So where are we going from here as to what is going to go before the village board? Do we need to look at it again before it goes before the village board? I would like to, personally, I'd like to see that in a, we discussed a whole bunch of stuff tonight on a lot of things. So I think I'd like to see it at our next meeting, just what is going to go before the village board. I'm seeing a lot of nodding on both sides of my head, so.
So I guess as of right now, we have nothing on next week's agenda. We could put this together for next week and
Great.
take the place of what was probably going to be canceled.
Let's do that.
Okay. So motion to continue to date certain of
June 20th,
June 20th.
is that right? Yep. So we have a motion.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, good job. Okay, as you're coming back here, approval of minutes, May 16th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
May 23rd?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. We have one abstain. Other business, Andrew, let's go over your stuff first before, I know I've got a couple of other things in other business.
So the staff memo on this item, and the item is discussion regarding consistency of plan review materials. We had a couple of workshops recently, probably the most recent one being the joint workshop with the board. We've had this recurring theme of confusion over quality of plan materials, quality of submittal, what to do exactly with revisions. Do we table things, bring them back? Do we have petitioners revise items following recommendations? There are...
And to that...
I'm sorry?
And to add to that, there were a number of emails that came to me only, everybody, from a number of commissioners about Party Fantasy and also Stella's. and I see you're addressing them here, that there was this questions about what went to the village board versus what was before us. And in the case of Party Fantasy, we approved it, and then on Stella's, we denied it, but we knew that certain things were changing and going to the board.
Right, and these are two petitions that I think we can just use. I mean, they're recent, they're fresh in everybody's mind.
Right.
But I think the general question is, we could take a couple of these examples, but apply it generally. And that's what we're looking for as a staff here is we've gotten to a point, I think, in the last couple of months where there's sufficient confusion on what it is we do. So I'm happy to answer questions on what it is we do, what happens to items after they leave the commission and before they go to the board. We do typically, if there was consensus to change something, we go over changes with the petitioner, whether recommended for approval or recommended for denial. We'll go through the discussion items with the petitioner and have them, if it's a clear consensus item, we do give them the option of revising their plan to address that specific item. So a couple of these are items that are of that nature. There's also things that if they said something very specific during the hearing and they revise their plan and submit it, and it remains consistent with the discussion and has not changed in any substantive way, we'll forward that to the board. What we typically do when we write the board report on these is we'll have a section that gets added to the board report that's not in the Plan Commission. Actually, there's a few sections. There's a section where we discuss the conditions from the Plan Commission. So we'll list out all the Plan Commission conditions recommended for approval or recommended for denial. We'll list them all out, and we'll say the following 9 conditions appear in the attached ordinance. If there's an update to one of those conditions, for example, they had to provide the safety plan in the case of Party Fantasy. They provide the safety plan, we can remove that condition. It's been done. So we might just do an update that says, update, this has been removed from the draft ordinance because they've addressed it. In the other section, we have a section called modifications after Plan Commission recommendation. So in the case of, I'm going to call it Maxine still, Stella's, there's a smoking area that was added after the Plan Commission, and there was, in our opinion, pretty clear consensus in the Plan Commission that that should be done. The petitioner added it, and then there was confusion as to why it had been added after the fact. So in each one of these cases, I feel like the item was consistent with the Plan Commission review, which the question for staff then is, should these items be tabled instead as an alternative? Continue to table depending on the item.
Mr. Stalin.
I'd like to try to answer, I mean, you asked 4 questions here that for a variety of purposes, and I think I'll just give you one answer that came to my mind, and the answer is no, I don't think those things need to come back to the Plan Commission. For the most part, most of the changes were inside floor space allocations and changes that probably wouldn't be a reason for us to be involved unless there was some kind of parking allocation that might be necessary due to a change of a use on the inside. My expectation, however, is that when new plans that are not the plans that the PC has approved change before it goes to the village board, that Mark's letter summary to the village board should explicitly indicate what happened, what changed, and that the staffs should provide that same kind of summary letter before the fact that it goes to the village board. I just think that that's a common courtesy type thing to tell the PC the exact same thing you're going to tell the village board, that changes were made, we did this to conform to that. So to me, that would satisfy any of these changes are being made on the fly. It's the fact that, yeah, we might have recommended them, but we didn't see the result. We didn't see the plans. I'd like to have a copy of those plans because I have Stella's and party fantasy plans on my system that'll be there forever, except they're the wrong plans. They're not the plans that were eventually approved. So I'd like to keep, get those plans, get them into my record. And then one of the things that you said, and I'll draw a little bit of discrepancy, right? In your staff comments section, it says you have requested on numerous occasions that these questions be directed to staff and the chairman of the commission so that, I guess, discrepancies can be pulled from the village board agenda. I have never heard staff or anybody even suggest that we might be able to pull a village board agenda item. Never, ever heard anything like that. And then I'd like you to explain a little bit when you say sending questions to the village board rather than staff adds to confusion of the board's review and may violate the Open Meetings Act. Am I in violation of the Open Meetings Act if I send a letter to our liaison, Ken Brady, and say that the plans that we reviewed aren't the same plans that
I don't know what
the village board has received?
I don't know what the hypothetical letter says. If your letter says something that is in conflict with what the findings that we sent them say, then sure, it's a possibility that it could be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. If you have a off the meeting record interpretation that differs from the interpretation that has been forwarded to the board, it's possible. I mean, like I said, I don't know what your letter says in this, but yes, conveying to the board that what they're seeing is somehow incorrect, I think you could certainly have an Open Meetings Act violation in there.
I would really like to have a discussion with the village attorney on that, if that is indeed true.
Well, I think one of the things that you're bringing up in other business is the July 18th workshop, right?
Yes.
So, good, that would be an appropriate
It's on the list.
Put it on the list.
So the other questions.
Andrew, to Commissioner Styland's point, I also was not aware that we could pull an item from the agenda. I'm aware that we've asked questions to come to staff and me, and they have been doing that. But I also wasn't aware that that's a possibility.
The possibility is not, I wouldn't say necessarily the authority of the commission. I didn't mean to imply that by the way this was written. If there's a problem, say for example, you click on the board agenda, look at the packet, and you see something that is horribly wrong, you see the ordinance the way it's written, it's entirely possible that there could be a mistake, and we either need to swap out the ordinance because we've made a mistake, or we can't even, the mistake is so bizarre we can't figure out what we did wrong, we would go to the manager and pull it off the agenda. So the suggestion is not that we can't, but the suggestion isn't that we are.
Do it on a regular basis, but if there's something.
No, if there's a problem,
Right.
by all means, let's take care of it.
Sure, right. But there seems to be confusion, because I got a number of emails specifically about the dance floor on Party Fantasy.
Okay.
And I know it was specifically talked about, and I know that we talked about it at the meeting, that there was going to be a dance floor, and it was going to be movable, and that there was even going to be some type of stage, because they could have live music. But there was surprise from some of the Plan Commission members that it was on the drawing. And that was probably added. So the interpretation there is that if it was added, then it looked more permanent than temporary.
Okay. And this is the question that I have. I mean, this question was not sent to me. I did
Right.
not have the opportunity to respond to it. I don't know what the question was. The implication is that the plans were swapped against the Plan Commission's wishes. And so what my question is do we stop petitioners from updating their plans? In this case, it had been, I would guess, maybe 5 or 6 weeks in between, because they had their lighting issue.
Right, which was another thing that came up.
So in that time, their architect is being paid to make the plan more like what they are going to do. They submitted that plan. The plan had the lighting on it. They've got the dance floor on it. There's nothing in it that, well, actually there was a fire department request that they had complied with. So they're showing how they're going to meet the conditions of approval by this point. They had added a separation in the track so that people could exit, as the fire department had asked for. So there are other things on it that I think are also consistent with what was asked for. The question, I guess, is if a petitioner is going to have this review with the Plan Commission, there's only a couple of options. We can continue it, bring it back, and do the revision with the Plan Commission, or we can have that plan, the Plan Commission version of the plan, whatever it was, not be improved before the board. So they don't confuse the issue. We get digital submittals, so we know when they come in, we can take that exact same plan and just forward it straight, and then whatever the conditions are, they are, and then they update the plan for permit review. So there's, a limited number of ways that we can address our confusion here.
Comments?
Well, the only thing I'll say is, in the past, I think we have given staff the capability to go and change the plans and work with the petitioner to change things, and we have asked that those plans come back before us or be emailed to us prior to being submitted to the village board. And unfortunately, I don't believe that has ever been done. And I think, again, it just goes back to my try to be a little bit more communicative with us. Tell us what has changed, do what Mark does in his status report, and I guess it bothers me when I see dates from the Plan Commission where you document plans dated blah, 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 and Mark does the exact same thing, plans dated blah, blah, blah,
but they're 10 days after the plans that we approved and no text that says what really changed or what happened. And
No
I think
detail,
just-
is it the level of detail that is the concern?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and the fact that it's just informing us and maybe sending us a complimentary copy of the plans to say.
Well,
here's
the
what
last time this came out, we made sure that the commission emailed the update, the board update. So you get the email now that says the board's packet is posted and available for review.
Yeah, but I think, who was the Starbucks, right? You send us the plans that said, here's the new plans, then they walked into the village board meeting with a completely new.
Well, he can't control that.
Exactly.
I mean, he can't control that.
But,
So I guess,
I mean, I'd like to hear what the other commissioners say, but to me, it's just a matter of courtesy and maybe improved communication.
Commissioner Johnson, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, I think they should see the plans that we got, that we reviewed, because when we're voting on something, the docket is referencing those plans dated that day.
Yeah, but a lot of cases, those plans are really crappy looking. I mean,
And maybe they need to see that.
Or
Well,
maybe it needs to be tabled. I mean,
And
this
that's
is
it.
the.
Maybe we need to table it. In the case of Party Fantasy, we probably should have tabled it. And in the case of Stella's, Stella's, I think, was just aligning the number of seats, and I don't think that deserved a table. So I think we, if we're going to get better, I think we need to table, especially there needs to be some number of maybe conditions that are changing that we need, that need to.
Forces it to come back.
Forces it to come back to us.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
We shouldn't be sending stuff on that has 14 conditions. There's
Right.
just-
Exactly. And we've done that. And one, I think that puts a burden on you guys too, that, granted, adding another meeting puts a burden, but then again, they give us cleaner packet that's near to what's going to the board. And that's the problem. Commissioner Dorbin, any comments?
I just think that you're right. We can't continue to be sending 14 or 15 conditions on. I think that sometimes what we send on doesn't exactly get communicated in the same tone in which we meant it to. So it either gets diluted or it gets made too bigger than what we want. So we have to figure out how to clean that part. I mean, that's something we have to do.
Right. It's us that have to do
Yes, but
it.
we have to figure out how to clean it up
Right.
before we send it on.
Right. Commissioner Powers?
I kind of agree with Commissioner Johnson. Whatever we approve, basically we should tuck it in the safe, and when it's time for the village board meeting, give it to them. When I saw the plans for Stella's and Party Fantasy, to me, I felt like it was, to be honest with you, disrespectful to the commission to have something like that done. It's like, if they're going to do drawings like that, I'm thinking to myself, why can't we have that? Why aren't we getting that?
Well, then we table it.
But the problem is that when we approve it, it's already too late because they've changed the plans. The plan, they've got to update plans when it goes to the board. We can't table it. We approved it already. It's gone.
No, before
And
we
I think
approve it,
that's-
we table it.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at.
That's what we
is
do.
if
Before we
this-
approve it, we table it.
Are you
If
saying pull it back after it's already gone on?
No.
Well, that's the way.
If we have to do a more thorough, if we feel that there are going to be changes to the, and Andrew, you're going to have to help here because, for instance, the photometrics for Parity Fantasy, if you knew you were going to push them to go for and get that photometrics, that probably should have been shared with us, so we could have tabled it and said, and actually, we could have done that too, saying there was enough resistance on our board that we could have said, let's table that until it's done.
And all of these, I think, are examples of things. I don't know where the miscommunication is exactly, but I think all of these things, I cannot think of one where I can't point to a specific point in the meeting where what staff did was exactly what the planning commission said. So that's what I think. I would prefer to not have a question after the fact of something that was
And so,
clearly
from
expressed
now on,
before.
one of the questions I'm going to ask is, we have to be cognizant of what we want, and if we strongly want something, then we have to table it. But we can't pull it back after we approve it, so it's got to be done before we approve it. And if we need to table it, then we table it in those cases. Now, for instance, on Stella's, I would have never even thought about tabling that because you modified the seating to what we approved.
And to that point, and to Commissioner Power's point, it's unusual for me to hear that that's disrespectful, to hear that you ask for a smoking area, they give you a smoking area. That is natural for a petitioner to do what they think they're agreeing from their perspective. They're agreeing with the suggestion that you've made, despite the fact that you recommended 6-0 to deny them.
Right.
So from their perspective, they're complying with a request that was made to them by a body that said no. So I think...
I mean, by right, that gives them, they can do whatever they want to. If we deny it, they're going to give the board what they want.
No.
They're doing
That's why we put conditions in there. We put conditions in there, even in a denial, because those conditions are there, and we've gotten burned by that.
We use those conditions to draft.
You absolutely, Steve, you have to put the conditions in, even if you know you're going to vote no, mainly because that's what goes with our recommendation. Our recommendation to deny is to deny and with these conditions. Now, the village board, we're recommending the village board can pull all of those out.
And I agree, Jim, I agree with your point about like taking a poll. Should we move forward with the plans? Because look how the plans evolved, the different meetings we had, and it's just like, if we're not satisfied, if I'm not satisfied, you take a poll and I say no, and if, I lose, then I lose. It goes forward. That's all I can do.
Commissioner Schaaf?
Thank you. My issue with Party Fantasy was, although they did provide the lighting, they stood up, and when we asked, because they did not meet, or the existing lighting did not meet the photometrics, that they provide an answer as to what they were going to do. And not only did he say he would not do that until the permit process, he actually accused us of impeding his request. Okay, and now here comes the package to the board, and here's the lighting, and that was after he said he was not going to do it, and that was part of special use.
Okay.
And I harped on it.
So in that case, you have staff working hard to get your request done. Is that bad?
No, that's not bad, but we should have denied it anyway on special use, right then and there when he said he wasn't going to do it. If he's going to do it, let him come before us with that. Because he said, I will not do this.
And we should have denied it right then and there.
Right
and
then
said,
and there.
And everybody has that option, again, I'm going to keep on saying it. Everybody's got the option to deny or approve everything.
But the fact of the matter is that Andrew was forewarned about the lighting situation. He put together his recommendation of increasing the wattage of the bulb, changing the fixture if necessary, and adding a pole light. That's what you advised them to do. And I think the problem was we took your advice and advised them to do it, and then they came back with this, no, you're abusing us or whatever.
Impeding us.
Impeding us.
I don't recall that.
Right, but I think you did what you were supposed to do at that time. And I don't think that, you know, having them do a study would have been nice, but I'd be willing to bet you that the study showed your solution was the right solution. Is that correct?
They had to do pole lights, yeah.
You know, so it's the fact that the petitioner didn't want to do something and then all of a sudden it got through to the village board, and again, we didn't know about it, was the right thing to do, but we're obviously upset because we didn't know about it until the village boards saw it.
When I made,
You know, and
But it was the right thing.
you may be upset. I wasn't, because I look at it from the standpoint of we're adding more detail to a packet that's going to the village. Now, if you want to say that, why didn't they do it before, then yeah, you can be upset about that. But adding it to it and then coming down on everybody saying, well, why was it added? That to me is counterproductive.
But we still weren't sending a complete packet then. We weren't sending
then,
a
right.
packet that was complete. We were sending a partial packet.
Yet somehow it passed along.
But again,
But it
staff,
turned into a complete pack.
But the implication is that staff.
Yeah, the implication, right.
Whether you're meaning it or not, the implication by suggesting to the trustees and the village administration that something was done incorrectly.
is the wrong message.
And my request in the past on those was, if you have a question about the materials going to the board and once you've had the chance to read them, if you have a question, feel free to ask. There's usually an explanation. But having been through enough of these types of questions now, that if the commission would prefer and the board would prefer, we should table these items.
Yep.
Clean it up. This is similar to the discussion that was had at the May 30th
workshop.
meeting, but
Right, exactly. And I agree. That was the discussion we had at the workshop. And actually, so we need to be vigilant about doing that. And I'm going to continue to say that. We need to be, and I'm not going, as the chairman, I might, as a board member, suggest a table, but I don't have to suggest a table. Anybody on this board can suggest something being tabled. It's not me. I will then bring it up for a vote, but not me. I don't suggest them. I will suggest them if I personally, as a plan commission member, feel it should be tabled, but I'm not going to do that as a rule. So, I mean, that's bottom line. And the other thing is that what Mr. Jennings and Ms. Jones are asking for is, if you do have a question, or even afterwards, after you see the meeting, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at the packet afterwards, send the questions to Andrew. For instance, on this one here, he had the answers as to why these things were modified. And that's all he's asking for. And to me, that's common courtesy to do that. And really I don't think they're doing anything on purpose. They're doing it to improve the packets that are going to the plan commission, to the village board. That's bottom line. And if you don't feel that way, then we table the things. That's really. Any other questions or comments?
When I made my complaint about that.
Please don't take it as a complaint. Take it as a
No, I
maybe-
did. It
you
was
know.
a complaint. Because I didn't look at the package entirely. And maybe if I'd have looked at the package entirely, I wouldn't have felt that same way. But I felt that the package went without any lighting solution. And then all of a sudden I go look at it and there is a lighting solution. You know, and that's what kind of irritated me.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other comments?
July, are you asking for other
Oh,
comments?
wait, other business.
Other business?
You have other business.
July 18th, we are penciling in for a land use review procedure mini seminar with the attorneys.
I will not be here.
We will FaceTime you on your iPad.
Where I'm going,
We're going to duct tape your face.
where I'm
to
going,
the,
where I'm going, I'd have to sit on, there's no reception where I'm going, unfortunately. I'd have to sit in a bar somewhere. No, I don't want to do that. Really, there's no reception where I'm going, so unfortunately. So July 18th, can everybody make that?
August, do we have a?
That's a land use review with the attorney?
Yeah, it's a workshop also,
August meeting?
what they discussed at our workshop with the village board. Because
July 18th,
some
okay.
members,
July 18th, okay.
July 18th, right?
Okay, and I believe, I'm just trying to check my calendar on the, we had a request to arrange for a van tour in August.
Yes.
And we've got, that one is penciled in for August 15th.
Excellent. Good. And if you can convey that to Commissioner Zangaro, that'd be great too.
That is not final yet, but that's the idea.
Excellent.
As in the past, if there are specific locations or themes where you want us to pull locations, send them to us, and we'll, you know, if there's a,
Parking seems to be a theme.
You think?
Was tonight.
So I, you
Just
know,
saying.
I think that might be, take some of our.
Go hang out at Brookvale.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I use that example, or
The fire
Woodland
truck
Creek,
again?
or, I think that's a good one. So,
I was going to say, did you want the fire truck there?
Oh,
so,
not if my husband has to be the tiller man.
do you have anything else on other
that's it
business?
for us. Is that for us?
Okay. Normally I save my stuff for last, but, there's a couple of things that,
Oh, sure, butt right in.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Speaking, do we have any times during the summer that folks are going to be on vacation, that they're going to miss something like I just said, I'm going to miss July 18th? I want to ensure that we have a quorum. So if there's any, big couple of meetings that you're going to be missing, please tell, Andrew and myself the next couple of weeks. So if they have something coming up that, there's a fear that we might not have, now we're going to be up to full staff again, that we won't have a quorum. I'd like to know that. Also, I need to appoint since Mr. Burns resigned, we need to vote on a secretary pro tem. Do I hear any volunteers? Do I hear any nominations? Now, I can't be, so.
Oh, I see. Yes,
Okay, good.
I will volunteer.
Commissioner Schaaf will be the secretary pro tem. Thank you. Thank you. That's all. Those are the only things I wanted to cover. I needed the secretary pro tem. Commissioner Dorban, other business?
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Nothing.
Commissioner Schaaf?
One thing, I thought landscape plans went to the board, but apparently they are approved on the Plan Commission. Okay, that's true?
No.
No?
Well,
Sometimes.
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 Signs.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Signs?
Sign landscaping, the Plan Commission is the final answer. A minor landscape change, say you've got somebody who wants to add a landscape area, relatively minor, Plan Commission is final. If it's landscaping associated with a special use or a major site plan change, then the Plan Commission recommends to the board.
Okay, so in the case of tonight, I had some questions, and so I called Lori Hazelwood to find out about the contamination of the impatiens, and she said, well, I had already reviewed that and gave my recommendations, and with that type of landscaping, I just thought maybe her review maybe should have been included.
Well, I thought you had sent an email to everyone saying that you had talked to Lori.
We incorporated her review, we didn't forward it. Yeah,
okay.
we took it, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
We took, after Commissioner Stylen suggested that we look at the two plants, we looked at it, found the information, asked Lori what she thought. We had already contacted them by that point to let them know that in all likelihood they were going to need to swap something out. We did not know then that they had already planted them. But yeah, we incorporated her comments.
I would have probably never called her if I'd have known that she had already knew about this.
I thought that we had included that in an email to the commission. I mean, it's possible that
and maybe I just overlooked it.
I thought you had talked to her, because I had emailed asking about a status, and you said you were waiting for something from Lori, and then...
I may not have sent it to the whole commission. It may have just been the Commissioner Stylen who had asked the question. I think I sent the end result out to everybody, but I don't think that I gave the status update in the middle.
Okay, that was all I had.
Commissioner Stylen?
Two things. The daycare center on Route 83, you were going to look at their landscaping requirements and tree,
Along the...
parkway trees.
Oh, good point. And while you're down there, take a look at Pine Hill as well.
The evergreens are still dead.
They're still dead? They didn't come
still
back
dead.
to life?
No.
Oh, all righty then.
And I forgot what the second thing was. So.
I'm sorry, I did that to you.
It'll come to you.
And the Jazz Cafe, they have their sign, but then they still have that big sign on the side. Did we approve it that way?
And they never put in their outdoor seating.
Yeah, they never put in their outdoor seating.
I think they have had their outdoor seating. I don't know if they've done it this year.
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it.
I'll talk to the health inspector. I feel like she reported back on something from that. It's possible that she was reporting on the plan.
If they choose not to put it up, they choose not to put it up.
I do not remember.
It's a banner sign.
It is not likely, though, that it was fully approved by the Plan Commission to be a banner sign. So I would have to look at it to find out.
Okay.
I recall approving banners for them on
Right.
a temporary basis. I do not recall any sort of permanent.
Well, it's right on your way to the daycare center.
Mr. Styler, did you remember your last thing?
Yeah. That's one.
Okay.
Unless I wrote it down.
Anything else? Did you write it down? Or a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Night all, thank you.